Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are going to be tackling a proposal that honestly has me really fired up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's all about how small island developing states, those amazing,
Right.
often kind of overlooked nations, can actually become like the unexpected heroes of sustainability.
Interest.
Not just surviving, but like actually thriving in the face of climate change.
Yeah.
And so we've got a couple things we're looking at today. We've got the proposal itself, which lays out the plan really clearly. And then I took some notes on the parts that I thought were particularly interesting and kind of got my brain buzzing.
Yeah, I think what's really captivating about this proposal is it really reframes the narrative. You know,
Yeah,
we're so used to hearing about SIDs as victims,
right,
of climate change.
right.
But this proposal is saying, no, they're the pioneers.
Mm,
They can use their unique position and the challenges they're facing to create a model for the rest of the world.
that's what hooked me too.
Yeah.
It's all about potential, not pity. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think we need to acknowledge the reality.
Right.
These island nations are dealing with some serious threats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Rising sea levels are a constant concern.
Yeah.
And we're seeing more and more extreme weather events,
Mm-hmm.
happening more often
Right.
and with greater intensity. And a lot of SIDs have economies that rely heavily on things like tourism or fishing,
Right.
which are very, very sensitive to.
Sensitive to climate shifts.
Yeah, exactly.
So how does this proposal suggest that they turn these challenges into opportunities?
Well,
What's the core idea?
it's the idea of a circular economy.
Okay.
Have you heard of that?
I have, but for the benefit of our listeners, maybe give us a quick.
Yeah, so you can think of it as a shift from that traditional take, make, waste model
Right.
to a system where resources are constantly being reused
Yeah.
and you minimize waste.
So instead of like a straight line, it's more like a closed loop
Exactly.
where everything gets cycled back in.
Yeah, and this proposal has some really ingenious ways to apply that to the specific context of SIs.
Okay. How so?
Well, they lay out three main strategies, and each one is carefully designed to leverage the unique resources and possibilities that these island nations have.
Okay. I am intrigued. Lay it on me.
All right, so first up, we've got renewable energy,
Oh, okay.
and they're really focusing on the potential of geothermal energy.
Geothermal. So that's
So a lot of SIs are located in volcanically active regions,
right
which means they have this powerful and consistent source of clean energy right there.
under their feet.
Exactly.
Now, in my notes, I saw that they mentioned some specific companies doing work in this area.
Yeah.
Ever Technologies rings a bell?
Right. Ever Technologies, they're developing something called closed-loop geothermal technology.
Hmm.
It's a game changer, especially for SIs. And then there's this company, PYREG GmbH.
Okay.
They specialize in turning waste into energy
Really?
using a process that produces biochar.
Biochar. Now you're going to have to explain that one to me.
Okay, so think of biochar as like charcoal, but with a few extra superpowers.
Oh, okay.
You create it by heating organic waste, like agricultural residue, in a low-oxygen environment.
Okay.
What you get is this charcoal-like substance that can improve soil fertility and sequester carbon from the atmosphere.
So it's a win-win for the environment and the economy.
Exactly.
Now that makes sense. Okay. So we've got geothermal and we've got biochar as two pieces of the renewable energy puzzle. What's the next strategy?
So next, they're focusing on innovative construction. And the star material here is basalt fiber.
Basalt fiber. Tell me more.
Okay, so basalt fiber comes from volcanic rock,
Okay.
which, as you know, a lot of SIDs have in abundance.
Right. So again, they're using resources that are readily available,
Yeah.
really fitting with that circular economy idea.
Yeah.
So what are they proposing to do with this basalt fiber?
Well, they're suggesting everything from using it in building materials to create more resilient homes
Okay.
to potentially even creating floating structures.
Whoa, hold on. Floating cities. That sounds like something out of science fiction.
It might sound futuristic, but it's a concept that's gaining a lot of traction as a solution for areas that are really vulnerable to rising sea levels. And when you think about it, SIDs, with their understanding of marine environments, they could become the leading experts in this field.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so we've got clean energy from geothermal and biochar.
Right.
We've got durable and potentially even floating structures made from basalt fiber.
Yep.
What's that third pillar of this proposal?
The third pillar focuses on leveraging their existing expertise
Okay.
in marine architecture. I mean, they're masters of working with the ocean.
Right.
So this proposal is saying take that knowledge and become global leaders in designing and building innovative marine infrastructure.
So things like floating parks, wave energy converters,
Yep.
stronger, more resilient coastal defenses.
Exactly. It's about taking what they already know how to do and turning it into a valuable resource for the rest of the world.
Right, because who better to design solutions for a world facing rising sea levels
Right.
than the people who have been living with the ocean's power for generations?
Exactly.
This is all incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
But let's get real for a moment.
Mhm.
These are ambitious ideas, and they're going to need some serious funding to get off the ground.
Yeah.
Does the proposal address that?
It does. And this is where things get really interesting. They suggest a combination of different funding mechanisms, including green bonds.
Okay.
You might already be familiar with those, and also decentralized autonomous organizations,
Okay.
or DAOs.
DAOs.
And of course, they emphasize the importance of international partnerships.
Okay, let's unpack all of that, starting with green bonds.
Okay.
Those have been around for a while. Could you give us a quick refresher on how they work?
Yeah, so green bonds are specifically designed to attract investors who are looking to support environmentally friendly projects.
Right.
They're becoming more and more popular as people and organizations are really starting to prioritize sustainable investments.
So in this case, SIDs could issue green bonds to raise capital for things like building those geothermal plants
Yeah.
or those basalt fiber production facilities.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about DAOs? You said those are a bit more cutting edge.
Yeah, so DAOs are essentially organizations that are run on blockchain technology, which allows communities to pool their resources and manage projects in a transparent and democratic way.
So in this case, you could have a DAO that's specifically set up to fund and manage like a community-owned renewable energy project.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
And it aligns perfectly with the proposal's focus on empowering those local communities
Yeah,
to take ownership of their sustainable future.
I like it. And then finally, you mentioned international partnerships. What kind of organizations are they looking to collaborate with?
So they're aiming to work with some of the major players in the sustainable development field, like the Green Climate Fund, the World Bank, and the Global Environment Facility.
Big name.
Yeah, organizations that have the resources and the expertise to really help SIs scale up their initiatives.
Make a real impact.
Yeah.
So it's a multi-pronged approach to funding, tapping into global investors who are interested in sustainability,
Right.
fostering those community-driven initiatives through DAOs,
Yep.
and leveraging the support of these established international organizations. This is starting to sound less like a proposal and more like a plan.
I know, right?
But let's talk about how this actually gets put into practice. What does the proposal say about implementation?
Well, they have a surprisingly practical approach.
Okay.
They recommend starting with pilot programs in a few select SIs.
Pilot programs, so kind of like,
Yeah, like testing grounds,
Hmm.
a way to see what works in the real world,
right,
refine their approach before trying to scale things up.
start small, learn as you go.
Exactly.
But then how do you make sure everyone is on the same page and working together effectively?
Well, that's where knowledge sharing comes in. The proposal emphasizes the need to create platforms where SIs can connect with each other.
Right.
Exchange information, share best practices, learn from each other's experiences.
So collaboration, not competition.
Exactly, because even though each island nation is unique,
Right.
they are all facing similar challenges.
Yeah.
So they can learn a lot from each other.
Makes sense. But how do you measure success? How do you know if these initiatives are actually making a difference?
Well, accountability is key.
Hmm.
And the proposal stresses that you need to have strong monitoring and evaluation frameworks in place.
Right. It's not enough to just have good intentions.
No, you need to be able to track your progress, measure your outcomes, make adjustments along the way.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about those outcomes. What kind of impact is this proposal envisioning?
So on the economic front, they're really aiming for diversification.
Okay.
Which means helping SIDs move away from dependence on those vulnerable sectors like tourism and fishing, and creating new opportunities in areas like renewable energy, basalt fiber production, marine architecture.
So more diverse and resilient economies.
Yes.
Ones that are better equipped to handle the challenges of a changing climate.
Exactly. And then, of course, there are the environmental benefits.
Right. Less pollution, less waste.
Reduced carbon emissions, less waste, and they even talk about using biochar to sequester carbon from the atmosphere.
Pulling carbon out of the air, that's huge. But what about the social impact? How would all of this affect the people who live in SIDs?
So first and foremost, it's about building resilience.
Yeah.
Imagine stronger, safer housing,
Right.
better coastal defenses,
Yeah.
a more stable economy, All of these things contribute to a greater sense of security
Right.
in the face of climate change.
So it's about creating a future where these communities can not just survive, but thrive.
Exactly. And then you've got the benefits of improved food security through more sustainable agricultural practices,
Right.
the potential for new jobs and economic opportunities in these emerging sectors.
Yeah, it's a really holistic vision, isn't it?
It is.
It addresses the economic, the environmental, and the social dimensions of sustainability
Yeah.
in a way that feels really interconnected and effective.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about the bigger picture, beyond the direct impact on the SIDs themselves. What kind of global impact could this have?
Well, if this proposal is successful, SIDs could actually become global leaders in these fields. They could be the go-to experts for marine architecture, for developing renewable energy solutions that are tailored to island environments, for implementing circular economy models.
So they could be like beacons of innovation, showing the world that even the most vulnerable nations can be at the forefront of creating a more sustainable future.
That's the power of this proposal. It's not just about helping SIDs survive. It's about empowering them to lead the way towards a better future for all of us.
This has been an amazing overview of this proposal.
It's a good one.
So much to unpack, so much potential. What stands out to you as the most significant aspect?
I think for me, it's the emphasis on community ownership.
Yeah.
This isn't about imposing solutions from the outside.
Right.
It's about empowering SIDs to develop and implement their own vision
Their own vision.
of a sustainable future,
Right.
which I think is absolutely essential for long-term success.
I couldn't agree more. It really highlights the importance of local knowledge ingenuity and that sense of ownership. But before we move on to part 2 of this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to consider. What other innovative solutions could be applied to address the unique challenges and opportunities that SIDs face? We'll pick up this conversation in our next segment, where we'll delve into some even more specific aspects of this proposal. Stay tuned.
As we dig deeper into this SID sustainability proposal, I think you'll notice a recurring theme.
Oh, yeah.
The interconnectedness of it all.
Okay.
It's not just about, isolated projects.
Right.
It's about creating a whole system
Right.
that's resilient and self-sustaining.
It's kind of like an ecosystem, isn't it? Where everything is connected.
Exactly.
And a change in one area can impact everything else.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And I think that interconnectedness, it really brings us to the heart of the proposal's implementation strategy.
Okay.
They're very clear that this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right, because each SID is unique.
Exactly.
They have their own set of resources, challenges,
Right.
cultural nuances.
Exactly. So how do you account for that diversity
Right.
while still working towards this common goal of sustainability?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, that's where the pilot programs come in.
Okay.
They're like testing grounds. A way to try out different approaches in the real world, see what works, figure out what needs to be adapted to fit the specific context.
Right. And in my notes, I noticed they mentioned partnering with specific technology providers, like, for example, EVER Technologies for geothermal energy.
Right.
And PYARG GmbH for biochar.
Yep.
What makes that kind of collaboration so important?
Well, it's about bringing together the best of both worlds, right? You've got the local knowledge and the expertise of the SIDs communities combined with the cutting-edge technology and innovation that these global companies can bring to the table.
So it's not just about importing ready-made solutions.
No.
It's about co-creating solutions that are tailor-made for each SIDs.
Yeah, and to make that co-creation even more effective, the proposal talks about, those knowledge-sharing platforms we talked about earlier.
Right.
Imagine a network of SIDs all experimenting with different approaches to renewable energy. Basalt fiber construction, marine architecture.
Right.
They can learn from each other's successes.
Right. Avoid making the same mistakes.
Exactly. And collectively accelerate the progress.
It's like a giant collective think tank.
Yeah.
Dedicated to finding the best solutions
Exactly.
for a sustainable future. That brings us to another critical point, I think, and that's the role of policy and regulation.
Yeah.
I notice the proposal acknowledges that you need a supportive framework to enable these innovations to actually flourish.
Absolutely. You can have the best ideas, the most cutting-edge technology.
Right.
But if the policy environment isn't conducive to sustainability,
Right.
it's going to be an uphill battle.
So are we talking about things like streamlining the permitting process for renewable energy projects?
Exactly.
Or updating building codes to allow for the use of basalt fiber?
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where sustainability isn't just an aspiration, but it's embedded in the rules and regulations that govern how things are done.
I imagine that education and training also play a pretty significant role in all of this.
Oh, absolutely.
You need people with the skills and the knowledge to build and maintain these new sustainable systems.
Right. You're absolutely right. The proposal talks about the need for, local training and education programs
Yeah.
to equip people with the skills they need to not just participate in this new green economy, but to lead the way.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about pilot programs, knowledge sharing policy, and regulation education. It's a pretty multifaceted approach to implementation,
It is.
but ultimately it all comes down to impact, right?
Right.
What kind of difference can all of this actually make in the lives of people living in SIDs?
Well, if you think back to those expected outcomes that we outlined earlier,
Yeah.
they paint a pretty compelling picture. We talked about economic transformation, right?
Uh-huh.
Helping SIDs move away from their dependence on those vulnerable sectors like tourism.
Right, creating new opportunities.
Yeah, and areas like renewable energy, basalt, fiber, marine architecture.
So building more diverse and resilient economies,
Yes.
ones that are better able to handle the unpredictable nature of a changing climate.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the environmental side of things.
Right, reducing carbon emissions, cutting down on waste.
Yeah, reducing carbon emissions, cutting down on waste, and even, harnessing the power of biochar to pull that carbon out of the atmosphere,
It's about creating a more sustainable future. Yeah.
both for the planet and for the people living in the sides.
And that sustainability, it translates into tangible benefits for the people who call these islands home, right?
Yeah.
Improve food security, safer, more resilient housing, new job opportunities.
Mhm.
It's a holistic vision
Yeah.
of a better future.
The potential for increased social resilience really stands
Yes.
out to me.
Yeah.
When communities have access to clean energy, safe and secure housing, a more stable economy,
Yeah.
they're just better equipped to handle whatever challenges come their way.
You've hit the nail on the head, that ability to bounce back from adversity, that sense of resilience. It's absolutely crucial in a world that's facing increasingly unpredictable climate impacts.
And speaking of resilience, let's not forget the potential for SITs to become global leaders in these areas.
Right.
Imagine them exporting their expertise, influencing international policies, inspiring other nations to follow their lead.
It's exciting to think about. It's exciting to envision a world where the nations that are often seen as the most vulnerable are actually leading the charge towards a more sustainable future
Yeah.
for everyone.
That's the transformative potential of this proposal.
Yeah.
It's not just about helping SIs survive. It's about empowering them to thrive and to lead the way towards a more sustainable future for all of us.
You know, one thing that keeps coming back to me as we discuss all of this is the human element.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about technology, innovation policy, but what about the role of culture, community, traditional knowledge in this whole process?
That's such an important point. And while innovation and technology are crucial, they need to be grounded in the unique cultural context
Right.
of each SIs.
Have each SI.
Ignoring the wealth of traditional knowledge and the strength of those community bonds, I think would be a huge missed opportunity.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot where modern solutions meet that time-tested wisdom.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the final part of our deep dive. We've explored the potential of this SIS sustainability proposal, the innovative strategies it lays out, the steps involved in making it a reality. But as we move forward, it's also crucial to remember that no plan is without its challenges.
That's right. And in our next segment, we'll delve into some of those potential obstacles and challenges that might arise, as well as the crucial role of monitoring and evaluation in ensuring that this vision for a sustainable future actually becomes a reality. Okay, so we've spent the last two parts really unpacking this SIS sustainability proposal. We've looked at the innovative strategies, the potential benefits, the steps they're suggesting to turn this vision into a reality.
Right.
But with any ambitious plan,
Right.
there are bound to be challenges.
Right. Having a great idea on paper is one thing, but making it actually happen, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, so we need to acknowledge those challenges and see how the proposal itself tackles them.
Exactly. What are some of the obstacles that you see as potentially standing in the way?
The funding's a big one. I mean, we talked about the different mechanisms they're suggesting.
The green bonds, the DAOs.
Right, green bonds, DAOs, international partnerships.
Yeah.
But actually securing that funding,
Right.
that's going to take some serious effort.
Especially considering many sides are already dealing with debt burdens and limited financial resources.
Exactly, and that's why this proposal puts so much emphasis on building those strong partnerships,
Okay.
both with investors who are looking for opportunities in sustainable development
Right.
and with those international organizations that have a track record of supporting these kinds of initiatives.
So it's about leveraging those relationships
Yeah,
to access the capital they need to get these projects going.
exactly.
Yeah.
But even if you have the funding, there's a question of capacity.
Right.
Do SIs have the infrastructure, the human resources to really implement these ambitious plans?
We're talking about some pretty big changes.
Yeah. And the proposal acknowledges that capacity building is going to be key, especially in areas like project management, technical expertise, policy development.
So you need people who are equipped to actually use the money effectively.
Right. And speaking of systems, what about the technology itself?
Yeah. Is everything they're proposing readily available?
Right. Are there gaps that need to be filled?
Are there
Yeah,
things that need to be developed further?
exactly like when we were talking about geothermal energy and basalt fiber production. Those seem like pretty well-established technologies.
Right.
But then some of the more futuristic ideas, like those floating structures,
Right. Are those ready to go?
though some of them might need a bit more research and development before they're ready for widespread use.
Which takes time and resources.
Exactly.
Again, highlighting the need for those international partnerships.
Yeah, it's about working together to push those innovations forward.
So we've got funding capacity technology.
Hmm.
Any other potential roadblocks we should be thinking about?
I think it's important to remember that these kinds of big changes often face political and social barriers as well. Take the circular economy, for example.
Okay.
It requires a real shift in mindset,
Yeah.
a move away from that traditional linear model of consumption and production.
Right.
And that kind of change can be slow.
Yeah.
It can be challenging.
So it's not just about building new infrastructure or adopting new technologies. It's about changing the way people think and act.
Exactly. And that takes time.
Yeah.
There might be resistance from people who benefit from the status quo, or, maybe just people who are hesitant to embrace new ways of doing things.
That makes sense. So how do you address those political and social dimensions?
Well, the proposal really stresses the importance of community engagement
Okay.
and ownership.
Ownership.
That's about making sure that people understand the benefits of these changes, not just in the long run,
Right.
but also in their everyday lives, and making sure that they feel like they're part of the solution.
Right. Not just passive recipients.
Exactly. Sustainability is about people. It's about creating a future that works for everyone.
Absolutely. And that brings us to our final point, which is monitoring and evaluation.
Yes.
It's not enough to just implement these projects and hope for the best, right?
No, you need to track progress, measure the impact, and be willing to adapt along the way.
So it's about accountability.
Yeah.
Making sure that these initiatives are actually making a difference.
Exactly. And that requires solid data collection, transparent reporting, and a willingness to learn from both successes and failures.
Because things don't always go according to plan.
Right. The key is to recognize that, make adjustments, and keep moving forward.
That adaptability is crucial when we're talking about something as complex and ever-changing as climate change.
Absolutely. It's not about finding the perfect solution.
Right.
It's about finding solutions that work and that can evolve as needed.
Solutions that can evolve.
Yeah, continuous improvement, learning, and adapting as you go. And I think that's one of the most important takeaways from this proposal as a whole.
Yeah.
It's not just a blueprint for sustainability. It's a roadmap for resilience, for navigating an uncertain future with, ingenuity, collaboration, and a commitment to creating a better world.
This has been a truly fascinating deep dive.
It had.
We've covered so much. We've explored the unique challenges and opportunities facing SIDs. We've looked at some really innovative solutions, and we've examined the steps involved in making it all happen.
And the potential bumps in the road.
Exactly. But as we wrap up, I want to leave you, our listener, with one final thought-provoking question. We've talked a lot about technology innovation and policy.
Right.
But what about the human element?
Yeah.
What role can things like culture, community, and traditional knowledge play in building a more sustainable future for SIDs? That's something I really encourage you to reflect on as you continue to learn about this topic and consider its implications not just for these island nations, but for all of us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.